some soft pretzels. And the first step that you want to do is you want to add your commercial yeast to your warm water. So we're going to take the temperature of the water, and it should be anywhere between 95 and 105 degrees. 90 to 105, that's fine. I'm right at 96, so we're perfect temperature. And then I'm going to start my yeast in the warm water to give it a little jump start before we mix it in the dough. Just whisk this together and then go ahead and let it set for about 5 minutes, and then we will add it to our flour. We've allowed our yeast to activate now, and you can see that it's nice and foamy, so I know that it's alive and ready to eat the food that we're going to give it. We're going to mix these two together after I add my salt and brown sugar to my flour. Just stir that up to make sure it's dispersed nice and evenly. And then I'm going to add in my liquid along with the yeast. The first portion of this you can easily do by hand in the bowl. Just stir it together until it all forms a ball, and then we will transfer this onto the cutting board. Mix this as much as you can by hand, and then we're going to transfer this onto a cutting board. There should be no excess flour available in the bowl, and then all we are going to do is take our hands and squeeze with the palm of our hand down into the cutting board, folding it over and moving the dough in a clockwise position, turning it a quarter turn each time. If you find that the dough does get sticky, you just want to place a little bit of dusting flour on your surface and then go ahead and knead it into that flour. Try not to use any excess because it'll just dry out your dough and make it really difficult to form a really smooth ball. You can see it's very shaggy right now. We're going to knead this for about 5 to 7 minutes, and it will look really smooth and elastic. So our dough has been kneaded and it's smooth and elastic, and its seam is on the bottom, and it's ready to be rested for our first bulk fermentation. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil in the bottom of the bowl, take the top of the dough, swirl it around, and then place the bottom of the dough down in the bowl. All I need to do is cover this with a bit of saran wrap and place it in a warm spot in the kitchen, or in this case, I'm going to place it in my small microwave, and that will create a little hot box for it to rise, and we're waiting for it to double. All right, so here's our dough. It's doubled in size, and we're going to take it out. This will deflate the dough, pushing all the gases out and getting the yeast back towards its food, so it'll redistribute that yeast. We want to barely flour the surface, just a very, very little bit, so our dough isn't sticking to our hands. And I'm going to divide this into 3 equal pieces. You can weigh this for sure or just eyeball it for today. So we want to take these pieces and kind of keep them in a rectangular position. And I'm going to do that just with 2 of these. Okay. And very much like the challah bread, we want to fold over the top part and pinch it down to create a seam with our fingertips, and then flip this over and do the same thing now into the center. And this will elongate the strand a lot. We're going to let that rest just for a minute. So I'm going to come back and do the same thing with this one. Pinch the tops over, flip it over, and then pinch the tops. So now it's in the center, okay? We generally let that rest in between for, a good minute or 2, and it will go ahead and stretch much more evenly. Okay, so now we're going to shape our pretzels. These have rested, and we're going to do one more turn pull where I pull this from the edge and I pinch it right to the bottom. So I create that one seam, enveloping all of that, really pinch that down, and then roll it to smooth it out. You see how long that goes? Very quickly. So it takes very little effort when you let this rest for just a minute or so. So we want to go right to the bottom edge and then give it a good roll. Now, the length of my cutting board is not long enough actually to create a perfect pretzel, because if I start to do this, it's too short. So what I want to do is actually go off the length of my cutting board by just rolling it, and then taking this here and rolling individually the edges. You can see I have no flour because I want it to have some traction on my cutting board. I'm going to take the first one, roll it longer, hold up one end, and roll this longer so it's nice and even. Okay, we'll go back to that first one, give it one more shot, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it. So I want to start with this shape here. It's like a big U. I'm going to cross over and then twist it once, open this up, and then pull this down here so that it's about an inch or inch and a half apart. Push this down to seal that seam, and then I pull my pretzel into its shape. It's very important that you let these have a lot of space, because what's important is that they're going to rise again. And if you have them too small and they rise, then you won't have any big holes in there. So we're gonna place this onto, well, I'll do the other one first and we'll put it on. So I'm gonna create this in a big U, cross over here, cross it one more time, pull it down to the center, a little bit apart, pinch down those seams, and stretch. These will go onto a parchment lined sheet pan, and I'm going to flip them over so that those seams are invisible. There we go. And then I will let them rest and proof one more time till they're about 1.5 times their original size. So I'm going to cover these with a towel, and then we'll come back to that and create the toppings for them. Okay, so we have our pretzels. They have 1.5 times their original size. They have like a nice little puff to them. And we see that they've expanded a little bit. In here, I have some dissolved brown sugar with some water. And I want to brush that onto here. The brown sugar is going to help give it a nice little brown coat, a little bit of sweetness to it. You could put this in a spray bottle if you wanted to, but what is most important is that I don't deflate the dough. So we just smooth that on. Okay, so once it's fully hydrated, it leaves a surface so that our product can stick to it. You can just leave it plain, maybe put some coarse salt on there. I have that everything but the bagel sesame kind of mixture. I'm just gonna sprinkle that on there. You can put herbs, you can put pizza sauce, cheese, whatever you want. This one has salt in it, so I'm not gonna add additional salt. And then I have some cheese over here that we'll put on top. And this will just kind of melt on there and get a little bit of crispy kind of skin. So it's okay that it's falling off because people love that extra crispy cheese part. So this is gonna go into the oven for about 7 to 10 minutes until it's a nice golden brown, and you're gonna see it have that oven spring and rise really nicely. The last step when you take your pretzels out of the oven is you have some melted butter. You can use olive oil also, but just melted butter to add a little bit of richness and a little bit of shine to your pretzels. Just kind of douse it in that and then enjoy.